Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for Research 411, a talk show focused on sharing best practices and trending research topics delivered by professional staff and prominent UT Dallas researchers from various disciplines. I am Tiffany Willoughby, Research Education Programs and Outreach Manager in the Office of Research. I will moderate today's discussion. Joining me today to talk about the heart and mind connection is Dr. Chandramallika Basak. Dr. Chandramallika Basak, Ph.D., is an associate professor in the psychology department of the School of Behavioral and Brain Sciences at the University of Texas at Dallas. Dr. Basak is the director of Lifespan Neuroscience and Cognition, LiNC, laboratory, which is located in the Center for Vital Longevity. Dr. Basak investigates how and where in the brain we attend to and remember information, rapidly switching between tasks or information, update information dynamically, and learn complex skills. Dr. Basak also studies how we can improve brain and cognition through various interventions, both cognitive and physical fitness, expertise such as chess, music, video games, and cardiovascular health in both younger and older adults. Dr. Basak earned a Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics with honors and a Master's of Science in Psychology, silver medalist, first class second, from University of Calcutta, India. She also has a dual Master's of Science degree in Applied Statistics and Experimental Psychology and a Ph.D. in Experimental Psychology from Syracuse, New York. She was a Beckman Institute postdoctoral fellow at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in Biological Intelligence and Human-Computer Interaction divisions. Prior to moving to UTD in 2011, she was a tenure-track assistant professor of psychology at Rice University, Texas. Dr. Basak's research is currently funded by 2 grants from National Institute of Aging, where 2 clinical trials are being conducted on cognitive interventions in older adults. Additionally, she has been funded and continues to be funded by various grants from foundations that fund research on prevention and cure of Alzheimer's disease, including AWARE and Darrell K. Royal Foundation for Alzheimer's Disease. Her honors include an Early Career Research Award at the 2007 Cognitive Aging Conference in Australia, an Outstanding Dissertation Award, an Outstanding Teaching Assistant Award from Syracuse University, and a Syracuse University Graduate Fellowship. She is Associate Editor in Cognitive Neuroscience, Specialty Section of Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, April 2020 to present, and is an editorial board member of Restorative Neuroscience and Neurology Journal. She is also the chair of Technology and Aging, a special interest group of American Psychological Association, APA Division 20, mentors, students, and postdocs of underrepresented minorities through APA, and serves as a reviewer of many journals, and is member of several grant review panels, including National Institutes of Health. Dr. Basak, welcome. Now, Dr. Basak, once you unmute, can you please tell me a little about your current research?
Oh, sorry, Tiffany, I didn't realize that I was on mute. So no problem. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Yeah, so you actually did refer to those 2 clinical trials that we are conducting in UT Dallas. Both of them are focused on evaluating the best behavioral interventions that can help boost cognition and brain function as well as brain structure in older adults. These 2 NIH-funded clinical trials, one of them is a multi-site study in collaboration with the University of Iowa and Posit Science Corporation, where we are using a brain training protocol developed by Posit Science Corporation in order to determine the changes in brain structure, such as how well our white matter is connected, brain function during some complex tasks, and the performance, older adults' performance in these tasks. The second clinical trial, which is very close to my heart, is a working memory training program. Now, this one is based on my previous research on aging, memory, and attention. So we essentially developed video games based on those past research. And these video games are now delivered through tablets. And what how the older adults do is that they train on these games on the tablets, and we try to see before and after changes in their cognition and brain. Our hypothesis is that we want to determine what are the best working memory training strategies that can help boost our cognition and brain performance. So we're very excited about this. We are very grateful to UT Dallas's Office of Research for helping us collect data on both these studies in a responsible manner in spite of the COVID onset. And in addition to these two studies, we're also running a few different studies on cognitive psychology, which are completely online. We modified our our tasks and moved it online so that participants can do it from their home. And we are also conducting some systematic meta-analysis that helps us understand long-term effects of cognitive training on behavior and brain. So meta-analysis are large systematic reviews and do not require any human subject testing. So they have been a boon during this pandemic in supporting our ongoing efforts and research.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Now, tell us a little more about what prompted your interest in studying the heart and mind connection. What, drives this research?
Well, I've always been interested in the idea of whether what's good for your heart is also good for your brain. I mean, a predominant cause of death in my father's side of family is compromised heart. And so staying fit and maintaining blood pressure are critical to heart health. Moreover, my postdoctoral training was under Dr. Art Kramer, who's renowned in the field of aging, on his work on cardiorespiratory fitness and brain aging. So he's run a lot of randomized control trials to show that in healthy aging, if you do cardiorespiratory fitness training, you do see changes not only in cognition, but also in brain aging. However, the idea of studying cardiorespiratory fitness in addition to arterial plasticity really stemmed from my collaboration with my then graduate student and now postdoc in the lab, Dr. Shua Chin. Much of our current work in UT Dallas has been based on these collaborations. So all I can say is that I'm very lucky to have mentors as well as mentees who have had common interests in studying heart and mind connection.
Absolutely. All right. Talk to us a little bit about those strategies that you are able to implement to assist individuals.
Yeah, so some of the strategies that we have been, doing in terms of these randomized control trials are looking at different types of working memory training. Working memory is a type of cognitive domain that is fundamental to many complex tasks. So in fact, one of the strongest predictor of fluid intelligence is working memory. So there is this whole notion in the field of cognitive psychology that if you can boost up working memory, then you might show also improvements in a lot of complex tasks that rely on this fundamental ability. So our focus has been to look at not just working memory training the way traditionally it's done, but whether we can enhance or boost those effects by trying different strategies where you are either making the information more unpredictable in nature, or you require continuous updating in your memory versus you don't require updating. So we're trying to tease out those mechanisms that can help boost your memory in older adults. In addition to that, we have also done a lot of work on video game training, and we have found that not all games are created equal. So we seem to find that strategy-based video games do seem to enhance cognition in older adults more so than, say, action-based video games. So that's good because nobody wants to just point and shoot at random people, even if they're in a virtual world. So strategy-based games are, non-aggressive in nature, generally the ones we use. It's like, building a town, building a business, a lot of complex things that you have to monitor, but there is no killing of people in virtual world. So they're not So and then what else? The final component is basically this physical fitness training. So what we have found is that even walking, for example, is in older adults is very beneficial. So in one of our studies, we found that, in collaboration with the University of Illinois, we did this randomized control trial on sedentary older adults, and we divided these participants into toning and stretching group versus, walking group. And they came 3 times a day, 3 times a week, 30 minutes per session for a period of a year. And we looked at their cognition before they started the training, midway through the training, and after completing the training, after 1 year of the training. We also assess their brain structure and function along the way. And what we find is that the walking group showed increases in hippocampal volume. It's a part of the brain that is very sensitive to early onset of Alzheimer's disease. And they also showed improvements in cognition reliably more than the toning and stretching group. So you don't have to go out and go running or jogging or do a high intensity exercise. Just walking is aerobic enough. So we do see benefits of aerobic exercise training more so than anaerobic exercise training.
Okay. Now, can you talk a little bit about whether or not any other diseases play a role in some of these cognitive declines and maybe even in some of your research?
Yeah. So we don't, in our studies, we don't include people who have severe depression. And part of the reason is that as we get older, and I'm seeing that with my grandmother, and many of you can relate with it, right? So as we get older, not only we do see cognitive decline, but we also see restriction in our social environment, restricted social environment, because a lot of the friends and families we know are not there anymore. So we, shrink in our, circle. We have a shrinking circle, and that has a very strong impact on our mental well-being. So often it's very hard to understand or disentangle early cognitive declines from declines, related to mental well-being, such as depression, because both have detrimental effects on cognition. So yes, it's very important to think about other kind of diseases. I mean, the kind of research we're doing now, hopefully is very beneficial for vascular dementia, because it's very important to understand that it's not just about aerobic fitness, which has been much of the body of my research work, but we are now diverting ourselves into arterial stiffness, so how stiff your arteries are. And if your arteries are very stiff, then your chances of suffering from vascular dementia is so high, and stroke as well. So there are all these compounding factors that play a role in order to understand how do we disentangle successful normal aging versus pathological aging versus some other disease factors.
So is it safe to say then that you keep the arterial walls elastic, so to speak, rather than plastic, and the rest of the body's tissues in the same manner by exercising your brain and exercising your heart?
So that's a good point, Tiffany. We don't know whether exercising your brain can help, improve your arterial plasticity. But there has been this idea that, maybe, aerobic exercise can help you maintain your arterial plasticity. There has been also a lot of studies saying that strength training is good for you. However, strength training actually hardens your arterial plasticity. So this is a new domain that we're investigating, this whole combination of let's look at arterial plasticity and, physical fitness together and try to look at cardiorespiratory function as well as cardiovascular health in combination. And I think the story is not as easy as go and exercise and you will have a good arterial plasticity, or you would have great arterial elasticity. There have been some promising approaches, not from our lab, which have shown that there are some types of exercise. So as I said, aerobic exercise, but also Tai Chi. So there have been studies that have found that long-term, those are not randomized clinical trial. However, they've found that, individuals who have done Tai Chi for a long period of time, they do have a 30 to 40% reduction in arterial stiffness compared to an age-matched control who didn't do that. So there are some promising approaches, but again, these are early stages in the field, and I can't wait to do more research on it and disentangle these effects better.
I can imagine so. I can see your enthusiasm in your response. Now, talk to me about inflammation. Does it play a role in the cardiovascular burden and mild cognitive impairment?
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's a great point you're bringing up, Tiffany. So inflammation is one of the biggest, detrimental factors as we get older. Much of the research comes from animal research. So when we talk about neuroprotective factors, one of the neuroprotective agents is actually anti-inflammatory agents or antioxidants, right? So the idea is that they can promote neuron growth, and one way to address this anti-inflammation is through fitness intervention. So there has been a strong link between how physical exercise can help reduce the inflammation in your central nervous system, and that could be a potential mechanism through which the physical exercise is influencing your cognition and brain function.
While we're speaking about fitness intervention for our listeners, do you have any recommendations for a fitness intervention if they are suffering from inflammation, or if they are just simply looking to boost their cardiorespiratory fitness? And a third, little question to tag on to that, can you also suggest even some of the strategic games that perhaps they could play or entertain on any of their electronic devices?
I'll be happy to answer that question. So let me tackle the physical exercise one, right? So in preparation for this, conversation, I was looking up at some animal research, which I'm not as well versed as in human research, and there has been this, we have known it for a long time. The data from animal models suggests that treadmill exercise, which is what the rats love to do, they love to run on these, running wheels. Nothing interesting to do otherwise, right? When you're at a cave, you just run on the wheels. so treadmill exercise has been shown to ameliorate, it doesn't only help you clear the amyloid beta, which is a major constituent of plaques in Alzheimer's disease. So that gets back to your previous question on dementia, but it also helps reduce the accumulation of tau, which is an essential component of neurofibrillary tangles in Alzheimer's models. And these effects are mostly established in animal research, but there is a number of studies and human populations that seems to suggest this common therapeutic theme that running or walking or treadmill-based exercises do help induce this exercise-based neuroprotection in human population through reduced inflammation of central nervous system. So as I said, just get out with your friends and enjoy the good weather that we finally are having in Dallas after that 1 week of ice storm. So go out and go for a walk, and that's great. I mean, that's a great start for cardiovascular exercise. You don't have to think that, oh, I'm not doing enough, and I'm not playing competitive level, or I'm not going out and running and jogging. You don't have to ruin your knees. Go out and do some moderate intensity walk, and that is a great start, and that has a lot of boost and benefit. So that would be a great starting point. And then if you can add a little bit of, strength training, there has been evidence showing that strength training is great for your bones and prevents fall, and fall prevention is, the number of falls we have is one of the strongest predictor of death in older adults. So if we can just keep our balance, mobility, I'm not talking about cognition here, but, that really does help. In terms of strategy video games, the ones we have used in the lab for training, there is this very old game. I don't think it even made much money in business. It's called Rise of Nations. So it's kind of like SimCity for those who are familiar with SimCity. So you're building up simulated city, except SimCity is not real time. So you want to play strategy games that are real-time strategy games. So it has the advantage of these kind of games is that they have this complexity of turn-based strategy game, like chess is a turn-based strategy game, so is SimCity. But you also have this time pressure of real time. So while you're playing, the computer is also building at the same time. So you have to keep track of not only your achievements, but also at the same time, the computer might be overcoming you. The other set of games that we have used in our past studies is something called Sushi Go Round. You're sitting in a sushi bar and you're a sushi chef and you have to make a certain amount of money to pay your bills. And then you make different types of sushi. You have to clean the plates. Customers come in, they come in different orders. Some people get angry because you've not served them on the time. So you have to monitor, how unhappy they are and kind of appease them with green tea, from time to time. And then your ingredients run out. So you either can pay for a quick delivery, which costs you money, or you plan in advance so that you get it in advance before it runs out, and then you get it for free, but then you can see there is a advanced planning involved. So it's a lot of fun game. I love playing it when I just have 5-6 minutes in my hand. And the advantage of these kind of phone games or casual games is what we call it, is that they just take 5 to 6 minutes to play.
Right.
So yeah, so our current game that we developed, which is also this working memory strategy game, is based on this idea that play it for 5 or 6 minutes. The games are not long in duration. They don't take 1.5 hours to play. They're not extremely complex to learn, but they're hopefully enjoyable, and they get into all these aspects of planning and task switching and multitasking and remembering a lot of information and simultaneously executing a lot of orders.
That makes sense. Definitely working different parts of the brain, activating different synapses. There is a similar game that you made me think of, and it's called Lightning Librarian. So instead of a sushi chef, you are in fact a librarian, and you have to keep up with the demand of people at the counter, either trying to check out books or return books. And so very interesting to make that connection.
Yeah, and that would be great, because these are the kind of games like that any age group would like, right? And particularly older adults who love to read, who love to do crosswords, so they are ones who really like books. So they would, I think, Lightning Librarian, that's great. I'll check it out.
Yes, please do. I think that might be a fun one for everyone to enjoy. One other comment that I had is, in talking about recommendations for fitness, a phrase came to my mind, and that is motion is lotion. So I know that as we move throughout life, we maybe don't have as much synovial fluid and different changes occur through our body, but as long as we keep moving, our bodies will continue to be more elastic rather than plastic.
You're right, Tiffany. When in late 90s, when I was, I joined Ph.D. I remember there was this very embarrassing phrase being used in many publications called "old dogs don't learn new tricks."
Oh yes,
inappropriate, completely inappropriate title. But that's what made me want to study cognitive aging, in terms of like, it's not like you don't learn new tricks. You learn it. We get older. We learn tricks. We just take longer time to learn it. So the point is that give us enough time and give us the right tools and right strategies and right tricks. Don't make us learn things that we're already good at. Not everything goes downhill when we age. So it's very important to target the skills that are declining, not targeting the skills that you're already doing well, and what are the best strategies, and then give enough time and best tools that we can, show brain plasticity and cognitive plasticity. Yeah.
Excellent. So this is a nice segue into my next question, which is, how does the brain adapt or talk to those different networks? And do the networks rewire themselves, or do they do something compensatory?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tiffany. So some of our studies, we actually have looked at how the brain reorganizes itself, when they're doing a task, or even when the brain is at rest. So in the field, we call it functional connectivity. So when we look at large-scale brain networks, we try to see how these different, voxels in the brain, we call them voxels because they're like pixels from fMRI, but they're not pictures with their volumes of voxels. So we try to look at how this, blood oxygen level dependent response from the MRI scanner for each of these voxels, how they are interrelated to each other. So these are this large scale kind of analysis, and that allows us to look at different types of networks, like emotional network, cognitive networks, sensory networks, and what we find is that as we get older, our networks get more, they get less segregated. So younger brains have very segregated network, our certain cognitive networks are more segregated from each other, depending on the kind of, task demands you have. You can deploy those networks more efficiently. But as we get older, we tend to have more crosstalk between the networks. It's almost like we need help from each other to compensate for actual volume declines, structural declines in the brain. However, these network analyses are mostly done when participants are in the scanner and just looking at a fixation cross or just closing their eyes and resting. So much of our lab research has been we have been interested in how does the brain network dynamically reorganize when you're doing a complex task. So remember, you just talked about this multitasking. So imagine if I'm just doing a single task like cooking. I mean, not that I can be scanned around that, but imagine if you're having this mobile scanner and you're cooking and that's it, versus cooking and answering doors and also carrying on a conversation with your friends in a party while you're trying to serve them food and so on. It's a very complex environment and you're doing multitasking. So we can, our brain, I'm interested in how these brain networks keep on reorganizing themselves in face of environmental demands, and how as we get older, these restructuring are adaptive or maladaptive. And so what we do find from some of our training studies, both physical fitness and cognitive training studies, that these network organization in older adults, which are not segregated enough, get more segregated after the training. And so they start looking more like younger brains. So that's promising, right? Because that's what we want eventually, is to be having a very having a very robust connectivity between your friends, which are in your network, and so that you can rely on each other and get the task done. And then when needed, when the task is very complex, you ask outside your group and say, hey, can you guys help me? Hey, team A, B, and C, can you help us do this very complex task? And that's how we find the brain is reorganized when you are doing a complex task versus a simple task where you can manage to do it with your team.
All righty, well, excellent. We have a few questions from our attendees. The first question is, has yoga been studied for its benefits on health?
That's a great question. Yeah, so there have been some studies on yoga. Tai Chi has been relatively more studied. Also, again, depends on which team is studying, which country is studying, and so forth. So we actually we just did this, study during the COVID times, where we are looking at a group of children. So the children are between, I think, 6 to 13 years of age, prepubescent, so 6 to 13, and they're getting different forms of yoga, meditation, and also learning Sanskrit, which is a dead language, but like Latin, root of many languages. So we want to see, and they're learning Sanskrit and also learning how to chant. So there is this idea of music and chanting. So we are looking into that. We're kind of we're already finding promising findings. I can't say too much about it because we're just writing up the publication. But yeah, the effects of yoga are very positive, not only to the mental well-being, which has been greatly studied in terms of how yoga affects our psychological functioning, but we're also seeing improvements in memory, and particularly in tasks where you have to focus your attention to a target or to a task at hand and ignore the distractors.
Thank you. Dr. Basak, the next question is, what is your opinion on the data with respect to the Mediterranean diet and the advantages of moderate alcohol intake? Diet does affect the heart, and how does it affect the brain?
There is actually it's very hard to do randomized control studies on diet, because if you tell me not to eat high carb X, Y, and Z, I will still go when I'm feeling sad or whatever, I'll still go and order my box of Chinese food and, eat the whole box in one go, or eat mashed potatoes, which is my comfort food. So diet research is extremely hard to do on, on humans. Much easier to give animals what to eat, because they don't have much choice and agency in what they decide to eat when they're in the cage. But there are promising results from randomized control trials on Mediterranean diet, which are solid findings, large-scale studies in humans, showing that adults who did Mediterranean diet improved in cognition more so than adults who did not do Mediterranean diet. So I would take that data very seriously and in a positive way. What was the second aspect of the question?
Let's see here. The second aspect was, does diet affect the heart, and how does it affect the brain?
Yeah. So there are multiple ways we can influence cardiovascular or cardiorespiratory function, exercise being one, but then the other is also the diet. And so again, much of the studies, on the diet are not randomized control trial. However, a lot of correlational studies show that people who maintain their diet not only keep their heart health, but that also, I'm assuming, will help with your blood pressure and cardiovascular health. So the effective oxygen that needs to go into your brain, especially to the parts of the brain that are susceptible to aging and Alzheimer's disease, that would be influenced by the diet indirectly.
Thank you, Dr. Basak. And one final question at this time from the audience. You mentioned that inflammation can also be detrimental to brain function. Also, that exercise can reduce this inflammation. Are there any medications or herbs that one can include into daily lifestyle that will reduce this harmful inflammation?
Well, I don't do research on medications. I mean, I have not done any studies of my own, so I don't want to say go ahead and take this herb or not. But I know that one thing that I do take, and that could be the Indian in me, we take turmeric on a regular basis. And there are animal studies that have shown that in rats who take turmeric, curcuma it's called. I think you can buy curcuma tablet. I just buy raw turmeric, make a cup of tea in the morning, put the turmeric, lemongrass, lemon, and ginger, and a teaspoon of honey. Those go in my morning COVID routine, maintaining my, antioxidant kind of stuff. So that's my morning tea. And I just use the actual ingredients, but you can buy turmeric as a powder, which we put in cooking, or you can buy tablets. I think they're called curcuma in French, and turmeric otherwise. The studies in rats showed that the telomeres, which are the tails of the chromosomes, they actually increase after intaking of turmeric. So turmeric traditionally in Indian medicine is used as anti-inflammation. So if you fall down and have a sprain, we would, our grandmothers would put, mash up the turmeric, the fresh turmeric, and then put a layer of it on our ankle or on our knee, and that would reduce the inflammation. So the idea of turmeric is really anti-inflammatory. In terms of antioxidants, there's a lot of research on blueberries showing that blueberries in animal research is extremely beneficial in not only, reducing the oxidants, but the free agents, but also in improving their spatial memory. So that's another thing that you can incorporate in your diet. And then none of these have side effects, unless you're having so much of blueberry that you're going to have a loose motion or stomach ailment. But blueberries are expensive enough. Nobody's going to eat a box of blueberries every day. So those are some ways that you can incorporate in regular, diet, some anti-inflammation approaches. And if you're in pain, please do take your anti-inflammation pills. Do not try to, soldier on through it. That's what I tell my parents, because they're so anti-medication. I have to tell them, please do take it. And the effects of inflammation is so bad on your brain, long-term effects, especially when you have chronic pain. And there are, wonderful research team in UT Dallas that can talk much better than me on chronic pain and effects of inflammation from chronic pain and how that affects your cognition. But yeah, turmeric and of course physical exercise. That way you don't have to take anything. You go out, take a walk, and it's another indirect way of hitting the inflammatory agents.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And as we close in on our session for today, do you have any last tips and tricks you want to share with the audience to keep a healthy heart and a healthy mind?
Well, I think the best trick I can think about, or tip I can think about, is go ahead and choose your parents. Now, listen, I was lucky. My parents had an arranged marriage. So they could tick off the boxes and say, okay, this disease is okay, but that disease not okay. But it's a rummy call for my child because his father and his mom fell in love with each other and we didn't manage to check those health boxes. So if you can't choose your parents, then there are many things that we can do in our life, to maintain our cognitive health. We talked about aerobic physical activity, adding a little bit of strength training, and definitely, the balance training such as Tai Chi, yoga, benefits not only your health, but also your attention and memory functioning, particularly in older adults. And these, physical exercise approaches have been promising for not only healthy aging, but also in people with early stages of dementia. And in delaying the dementia, delaying the onset of dementia or slowing the rate of dementia. In addition to that, if you're compromised, if you can't do physical, if you can't do stringent physical fitness training, or you can't walk for a long distance and you have some physical, ailments that stops you from being as active as you would like to be, then there are also some kind of cognitive training that we talked about and touched upon, such as real-time strategy video game or working memory training that you can engage in. But finally, if you don't have anything formal, just go and try to learn something new and different and challenge yourself. Do something out of box and do something that you think that you would not be good at. Don't do something that you're already good at, because that's kind of training functions or brain cells that are intact in you, right? So don't do another crossword puzzle or Sudoku, especially if you're older, because older adults are usually very good at it, and that's why crossword puzzle and Sudoku have not been very effective as training tools to improve cognition. But learn a second language, go on a spinning class and learn a second language while you're spinning, while you are going through a beautiful, Provence locale, as you're going through and buying your baguette and stopping by the boulangerie. Make it fun. Do some kind of combination. Do it with your friends. Add the social aspect, physical aspect, and the learning aspect. And once you think that you have learned something pretty well and you're almost at your peak performance, doesn't have to be other people's peak performance, your peak performance, and now things are coming too easily for you, then change the routine and do something different, or do it a little bit more difficult. So those are the keys. Challenge yourself cognitively, not just physically, and drink a little glass of wine from now on, because there is the research in blue zones do show that social interaction, physical, staying cognitively active, and also, having a glass of wine or so is very beneficial for long-term effects of healthy aging.
All righty, thank you, Dr. Basak. And I have one final question from the audience. Given all your research, does it still make sense to think of the brain and heart as separate organs, or are they so interconnected that they are really one organ?
So we should think of our body as a temple. And, we should not think of, these organs are interconnected, but they're not the same, because it's not just by pumping enough oxygen into your brain, everything gets better in the brain. So that would have been great, right? But that's not how it works. It seems that this, enhanced cardiorespiratory function is targeting certain areas of the brain more so than others. So there is a differential effect. So I wouldn't call them to be one and same. However, improving one does tend to also influence the other. So I wouldn't call them one and the same, but I would also let's think of our body as a unified whole, as a temple, and let's think of how these different parts of our body are connected. So next time, if you have a fall, just don't think about, oh, I broke my ankle. Think about, I broke my ankle and then I was limping for 6 months. Now that has caused a spine problem because now I have a sciatica because I had, uneven walking style for so long. So now my spine is affected, and that in turn can reduce my mobility. Reduced mobility increases my blood pressure, and you can see how it all cascades, and eventually,
absolutely, a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Basak, thank you so very much for being on our program today and sharing valuable information with our community. Interested in attending these or other Office of Research events, more information can be found at research.utdallas.edu. Thank you.